All right, we have 51 people live today tuning in. We're hoping that given the topic, the key to digital transformation, we hope that more people will join in. People are streaming in. I've got 4 people here today. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This is the first ever KL Startup Summit. We are obviously queuing up for Rise KL next year. And we're trying to, that's why we scheduled it in March, because when we looked at Rise KL, we felt that was, it's a lot of these startup conferences often, especially the really big ones, they focus on startups that are a little bit more established. And then what happens to the early stage of the ecosystem. So being ecosystem builders, a lot of the people behind the KL Startup Summit, myself, Inba, and a lot of the other moderators that you've seen, we are early stage ecosystem builders. We feel that a lot share the same mission, that startups are phenomenal engines of digital adoption and digital transformation. We know that the government doesn't have a great track record in pushing digital transformation. We know that corporates alone are not really motivated to want to do it. So we see startups as the little engine that could, right? It's plugging away. Aizat will know what I mean. Day in, day out, just trying to convince these businesses and SMEs, and I'm sure even the guy, even over at Xero, right? I mean, it's not easy to convince these guys to just sort of take that first step. So that brings us into our panel today. Again, thank you very much for being here, and thanks to everyone who's tuning in. It's not the most exciting topic. It's dry unless you geek out on stuff like this. But we'll try and make it really interesting. So the topic today is the key to digital transformation. We have. I'm just going to run through names, but I'm gonna zoom in, give you guys. We're going to go through the panel. So we have Kevin Fitzgerald, who's managing director of Xero APAC or
Asia.
Right? Asia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Thank you for being here today. Xero is an accounting platform, one of the largest cloud accounting platforms. Correct me if I'm ever wrong on these things in the world. There we have Sandeep Joseph from Ampersand Advisory. You're one of the founders.
Yep.
Correct? Yep. Founder and CEO. And I'll give you a chance to talk about Ampersand later and what they do. And then Aizat. Aizat is entrepreneur extraordinaire, co-founder of Droppy. One of easily one of our success stories, and a lot more to expect from Aizat, right? And then we have John Stona, head of from Stripe, head of Asia Pac marketing. Am I right, John?
Correct. That's right.
Stripe needs no introduction. We'll get to that in a while. So let's just let me just set the stage. Let me just get right into it. Okay, so. I think whether it's very hard to go anywhere these days without hearing of this word digital and digital transformation. Right? It seems like it's one of the most commonly heard phrases in the digital economy, right? But leaving aside the fact that it's another piece of jargon, right? I think in every one of these panels I do, I'm always trying to get as many perspectives or insights that I can about what digital transformation actually means from a theoretical level. Can we explain it to the layman, someone who doesn't care about it, but how do we make them care? And then what does it look like, right? How do we describe it succinctly and to the point? Now I'll invite you guys to do it later on in your own words. For me, I've tried to break it down to as few words as possible, but for me, it's using technology to dramatically increase how these perform and how and the reach of these companies, right? So to me, I boiled it down to that, right? Because I think if you increase your reach and you increase your performance, you're just going to be a more profitable company. You're just going to create more wealth, right? So if the advent of digital transformation, I think as probably 20 years now, where businesses started realizing that they could really wasn't just IT for IT's sake, but it was catapulting digital to next level, right? I want to talk about this thing called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Everyone talks about it. It's came out of the World Economic Forum. I think what we're seeing today, especially in the last decade, this advent of digital transformation, how it's entered our collective consciousness, brought about by, I'd like to make a note of this cascading new technologies, right? Mm-hmm. And we're talking about new technologies, not one, not two, multiple, that seem to be sort of converging, unlike anything the world has ever seen before, right? So we've all heard the story of the first industrial revolution, where it was brought about by mechanization, and it was powered by those little steam things, and steam engines, and those little paddle wheels, and then we had the second industrial revolution, mass production, discovery of electricity, big game changers, right? And then the third was the computer, the transistor on the chip, electronics. Now, these were all game-changing, like world-changing things, and it was just 2 or 3 key technology at the time. Today, however, we see there's like a gazillion of these new technologies, and they're all maturing and getting more accessible at the same time, right? Artificial intelligence, augmented reality. I have to read off a list because there's so many. Virtual reality, we have robotics and drone technology, we have IoT, we have gene editing, gene sequencing, 3D printing, we have nanotechnology, machine learning, blockchain. And I'm sure quite a few more that I've missed. And things have been here for a while, but what happens is they're getting more and more mature now. So what kind of revolution are we really seeing in the next 10 to 20 years, right? So enterprises are increasingly contemplating an existential moment. They either disrupt or be disrupted, right? All too easily, we see examples like Airbnb, Uber, Netflix disrupting these billion-dollar industries. Less overt, just as disruptive, are the trillion-dollar technology companies like the 4 A's, right? The Amazon, the Alphabet, the Apple, and the Alibaba, having real aspirations of sort of getting into banking, insurance, healthcare, transportation, retail, and full retail, right? And this has got lots of players shaking in their boots, right? Digital transformation is upon us, whether we like it or not, right? So that preamble out of the way, that stage being set, I'm going to jump straight into our panel, and I'm going to start with a question each, right? I'm going to start with you, Kevin, right? Mm-hmm. You sit in Xero. Xero is a company that, probably born in the cloud, lives in the cloud, right? And nothing screams digital transformation to most people more than cloud, right? It's like digital cloud, right? So why don't you start by telling us why moving the accounting function, and maybe I'm not fully talking about the scope of Xero here, but let's start with the accounting function to the cloud. How does that benefit small business? And what's a business owner actually going to see by using Xero? I mean, it's nifty, and I use it, by the way, love it. But good. What's that gonna really do in the context of digital transformation?
Oh, it's a big question. I just want to say hello to everybody tuning in. Thanks for coming to see us on Saturday afternoon. Great opener, Arvind. Actually, I'll start by saying Xero's 15 years old, right? So that helps me put it in perspective sometimes. Say, wow, we started 15 years ago. But still, I feel like we're at the start of a lot of digitization in a lot of regions. It's fascinating to see that in that 15 years, and this might help people get perspective on the digital revolution that we are going through at the moment. It took us 11 years to get 1 million SMEs onto the platform, and then it only took us another 18 months to add another 1 million. So, like what you're seeing is basically phase one is like grunt work, hard work, but then the pace of change happens really quickly. And really what that means for business owners and how I think about it is Xero's digitizing the core of the business. So I think about it as a circle. We could be called the back office, the operational side of the business, but businesses that start to digitize the core have also got to think about digitizing the edge. And when I speak to SMEs, I see them one or the other. And if they do the latter, which is digitize from the outside in, it's probably because of people like John and his crew at Stripe, digitizing the edge around the business, like how they basically interact with their customers. And it could be B2B or B2C, but they're seeing their customer digitize. And they're having a wake-up moment to say, hey, we need to basically keep that consumer happy. We need to be able to take digital payments. We've got to have a great digital relationship with them. And then that's the first hit, like they really see it as, wow, this has actually made a big impact to us. And look how easy it is. look how easy it feels, and look at all this extra time we're getting back, and we're winning new business. So when we speak to customers that digitize with Xero first, what we recognize is that it's probably less about the interaction with their customers where they're getting that initial upside. It's more about the impact internally on their teams themselves, getting rid of administrative burdens around bookkeeping, accounting, keeping on top of all the reports. And for me, lifting that weight off your shoulders is the ideal scenario we want to hear from SMEs, because like us all, if we've started businesses and everybody tuning in, you didn't do it to do bookkeeping. You did it because of the product or service or whatever you wanted to build. Like, you had a dream of building something. And then next of all, Saturday and Sunday afternoons, you're at home, doing some bookkeeping. So we see a big, big impact on the behavior of a business owner when they see the digitalization of what Xero can do to their accounting records. But what does that really give them in terms of you being able to understand the financial health of your business on a yesterday basis? So, we've built an ecosystem, and we could have just built accounting software in the cloud, but it wouldn't have the impact that Xero has. So we've API connections to major banks, API connections to point of sale, payments, inventory management, payroll, all the way around the SME. We want to make sure that data is flowing really cleanly. It's making sense. And in that, a business owner can wake up in the morning time and get a real-time view, well, let's say yesterday, as real-time as possible, of the state of their business. And to be honest, we see people spend time in Xero. They're looking at who owes them money and who they've got to pay money to. It comes down, it's as simple as that. When they wake up in the mornings, we see people log in just after 7 a.m. to check Xero, and they're straight into those pages. So that telling us that cash flow is the most important thing on their mind. And to get that right, that's where we have the biggest impact.
Yeah, that's really good insight. That at the end of the day, it boils back down to what I'm an accountant by training, not a practicing one, but that was my degree. And I remember in the first in my first class, right, the lecturer was like, "What is accounting?" Right, and that was the first time I ever, after about an hour, he teased us. That was the first time I heard about accounting being an information capture system. Yeah. Right. It wasn't anything else. It was just how do we, and this was in, I don't want to say how old I was. I don't want to say when, because, tell me how old I am. But this was way back before the millennium. And, to think of accounting as an information capture system. And then what you guys have done is just to make that, to sort of simplify that, to make it to a point where it's yesterday. I have personal experience from running a startup. I suffered from not having good information. I did not realize that I was losing revenue to my competitors because my accounting lagged a month or 5 weeks behind.
Yeah.
And I could not detect that loss in revenue. And this was as recently as 2016. So then, right, I would have known, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, really true. Like, and we have a similar background, right? Like, I was an accountant for a long time, and I felt like I got hoodwinked into it because I did all exams, and then I had to do administrative work for my clients. And I was like, that's not really what I want to do. But now the systems do it, like, and accountants can provide much better value because of the information that's captured. Yeah.
And that's a really interesting point. I'll get back to that later. But I just want to run through. So next, thanks, Kevin. That was great insight. Next up, we have Sandeep Joseph, CEO and founder, one of the founders of Ampersand Advisory. Again, I'm going to describe it. Please feel free to correct me, Sandeep. Creative media and communications agency, but with one, or you might argue both legs planted in the digital transformation space, with their focus on data analytics. It's right there on their, if you go in, right there is one of the 4 pillars of things that they do, analytics and artificial intelligence. A lot of people think like, in the marketing space, when they think digital transformation, I did a straw poll. I asked a couple of people, do you think, marketing doesn't come up as the first thing that you think you would associate artificial intelligence with, but, the second largest company in the world is effectively a MarTech company, isn't it? I mean, that's Google is a marketing company, no matter how you want to look at it, right? And so talk about digital transformation here in this space, but in Malaysia, Sandeep, and I'm sure in lots of countries in Asia, and this is a personal bugbear, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions, I don't know, are spent on billboards. So what are some of the business owners and sort of corporate execs? So we got the SME owners and we got the corporate execs. Do they, firstly, like coming back to my point earlier, do they associate digital transformation that they hear in the zeitgeist, in the what they hear, or with Marcom function? Is it a natural? Do you have to sell them one extra layer, or do they get it? And what are some of the challenges you faced trying to convince business folk on that part about reaching more customers by going digital? So everyone knows we need to go digital. Everyone spends a bit of money on it, but what are some of the challenges? What's some of the feedback you've gotten when you deal with both SMEs and big companies?
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Arvind, and very enlightening to hear Kevin speak earlier as well. So I've been in the digital transformation business for more than 20 years, right? And in the beginning, nobody got it, or people were spending 1% of their budget on digital, and that was like a throwaway. And we still had evangelized to get that 1% in the late 90s, right? Today, thanks to COVID as well, people are forced to go digital. It's accelerated 5 years of transformation into 1 year and so on. So brands which never did e-commerce are doing e-commerce. Brands who never looked at digital marketing spends, especially SMEs who were not sure, right, how effective it was, they are now going, full throttle in that direction. So in terms of challenges to tell clients you should go digital, now we don't have to tell them. They want to go digital. They're they're coming to us asking for digital solutions. I think the challenge is for all the players in the industry, in our space at least, is there is still a lack of knowledge on the client side. There's still a lack of knowledge among agencies. So you may want to go digital, but what is the best solution to go digital? Which is the best agency to work with, or what is the correct price you should be paying? What kind of return should you expect? I really like Kevin's example of people using Xero to check what is the cash flow, right? So I as an SME owner, I am trying to get faster responses because we handle millions of dollars of media that goes through us. So I have to pay media bills, I have to pay media owners, and I have to collect from clients whom I'm buying media on their behalf and billing them, right? So cash flow is critical for me, and it's important for me to know what's happening. But because of a lot of the media owners are still their bills are coming in slower than one would expect, because they have some quite old-fashioned process of billing us. And clients can be of different kinds, but usually I would say Malaysian clients pretty much pay on time, and I have no issues on that front. Unlike India, where when I used to work, the India payment collection is the biggest reason SMEs get off. But when you have these kind of challenges, I am now actually exploring. You could call it an analytics tool or AI tool called Cubo, which is part of the Microsoft Teams family of tools, which can integrate with accounting software like Kevin's and pull data, and I can query it. So I can sit in the toilet in the morning and ask questions and get answers, instead of actually having to ask my finance person to generate a report and then email that across to me. And by the time I get to look at that email, I've forgotten why I wanted to look at it, and I'm busy trying to solve some other problem in my workday, right? So this kind of decision-making power that technology and digital transformation allows it affects marketers for sure. Should you change your media mix? Should you stop buying a certain platform, reduce budget, and buy somewhere else? is something that would normally take days or months for them to decide. We would send them a report, then we have to have a meeting, then we have to decide, and then we change, right? Now that is a matter of weeks or months. It can be much more instantaneous if everybody has access to that information immediately. So the challenge is really getting clients to see that this immediate stuff can be done quite painlessly now, and it doesn't take massive IT investment to get to this. It's interesting you mentioned the billboards, right? So billboards are considered this dumb medium, and they're not interactive. And unlike, say, Google or Facebook, you can't get 30 pages of reports on what happened on your ads when you do a billboard buy. But even billboard owners now are using technology or trying to use technology. So we have partnered with an Australian company called Novus Intelligence to put cameras on billboards which actually count cars using computer vision. So every measure of traffic passing a billboard is not some government statistic that was calculated years ago. And those usually done manually by some guy standing there and clicking a counter, right? Now this can be done using technology. There are other people who track it by counting the number of phones that are passing a particular billboard, by integrating with apps that are on that phone. So even billboard owners know they need to become more accountable and have all this in place. So it's changing. Is it changing as fast as we would like? No. But therein lies the opportunity for companies like ourselves to in and work with clients to get them there. I can see there's definitely a lot more appetite and inquiries and interest. The problem for clients, if I were to put myself in their shoes, is they don't know which is the right way. There are 5 ways of transforming, let's say, in any department that they have. Which is the right vendor, or are all the vendors may not even matter so much as the people who are using the tools provided by the vendors, right? So it's how, rather than do I need to transform, it's how do I transform, which is the sequence, what is the steps. And it's a bit like being a parent, right? If you've never been a parent before, you're going to learn trial and error. So people have not transformed digitally before. They can read all they like and hire a few people or even hire big consulting firms. But if you've never done it before, you need to go through the trial and error. I was reading some McKinsey study which says I think only 16% or 17% of digital transformation potential had been reached. And this was in 2018, before the pandemic. And that was in a market like the US, right? So if the 3% potential still to go there, and with every new technology, that potential goes up even more, right? So we are nowhere where we should be, and that should be good news for people like Kevin and John, because there's still a lot of upside on whatever businesses we're in. This is just the beginning. I used to say that for data and AI and transformation, 2021 is like where the internet was in 1995. We are, just at the beginning. There's tons more that's going to happen.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Thanks for that, Sandeep. And I think I do feel, however, that it's more than just like more than that. We're just scratching the surface here, right? But I think it's going to accelerate. I'd like to anybody just feel free to jump in later on when you're speaking, just to talk about how fast you think the pace of this transformation is going to be. Like, how do you quantify it, right? Are we, I used to watch a cartoon called The Jetsons. Again, plenty of clues about my age. But by now we were supposed to have flying cars, but Elon Musk is still persisting with his being firmly on the ground. The only guy talking about flying cars was a ex-minister that we had here in Malaysia. So that said, though, Sandeep, I just want to add on to what you and then go into Aizat. So you're like an agency model, right? And you work with clients, and the business model is an agency model. I'm sure there's a lot of things that can be eventually sort of evolved in terms of the business model. But when we talk about startups, which leads me to my to the next panelist, Aizat. These guys are even playing around not just with technology, but the way that people do business, right? So Aizat is in the hot seat. Aizat is, as I mentioned earlier, a startup founder, one of only 3 Malaysian startups to have been admitted into the Y Combinator Accelerator in San Francisco, I believe, right? So your startup, Aizat, Droppy, has 40,000 retailers that use your B2B commerce
B2B.
platform, right? As you guys call it. So 40,000 of anything is great, right? And one scenario is that the 40,000 was low-hanging fruit, right, in terms of retailers, right, and that selling the digital store get companies to to adopt digital and by extension transform their business. That's going to get harder as you grow, as you push through market saturation, right? So, or the other perspective is that 40K was the critical, and then now that's it, right? You guys are just going to, like what Kevin mentioned earlier, right? Next 40K is going to be the next 18 months kind of thing, right? I hope it's the latter, of course, but more interestingly, if you have a thought on that, but more interestingly would be, how did you pull off this digital transformation sort of feat of getting 40,000 businesses to sign up when, a lot of companies, a lot of new startups are even struggling to get 40,000 app installs, right? In the early stage, much less getting 40,000 customers who are actually using product, right? So I think this is central. The reason I'm asking this question is, title is key to digital transformation. I've always said that startups are like the little engines that they're powerful engines of digital adoption, digital transformation. How did you guys do it? How did you use that power of the startup to do it?
Yeah. Thanks, Arvind, and thanks everyone for listening in. So I think just to give you a bit of context, so one of the founder for Droppy. So we're a B2B e-commerce marketplace where we assist all the retailers to manage all their purchase orders, linking up with distributors as well as manufacturers. Actually, just about 2 weeks ago, we've already hit 70,000 businesses. There are about 220,000 retailers here in Malaysia. Just to give a bit of a context with you guys as well, when we started first year, we were looking at things very differently, very wrong, let's say, where we try to just go down the ground and really talk to the retailers ourselves, try to introduce ourselves to them and telling them the benefit of going to digitalization. And actually, the take rate is very, very slow. I think we only managed to onboard like maybe 1 or 2 retailers a day, and that is not the numbers that we're looking for. And when we start to really think like between us founders as well, and we try to go one level up within the supply chain. So we started to go directly towards the distributors, started to go towards the manufacturers, and we realized that the key for us to really to digitize the entire supply chain is to actually get the main principal, someone who is actually in charge, rather than actually going down the ground. So what we did was that we quickly just started speaking to all the really big brands like Nestle, Unilever, and tried to really understand what's their main problem. And one of the challenges that we had back then was that a lot of the operation team actually had the perception that once they go digitize, their operation team is going to be out of job, which is actually wrong. So that is the kind of perception that we actually had to really make sure that we ease up and really explain to them that no, actually, this is not going to happen. In fact, you guys will be able to have more data, understand your customers even better, and you will then to be able to really do your jobs more effectively, right? So what we did was that when we started working with all these really big brands, and we worked together with their operations team, worked together with their clients, distributor, to slowly onboard of all these distributors and retailers as well. And that's one of the key that we realized that how we're actually getting all these retailers to come on board. Because to think about it, at least in Southeast Asia, relationship is also very important. Even if, let's say, you're going to throw in really good price to your customers, sometimes they will still stick to their existing provider or existing suppliers simply because of the trust that's already been built. So I personally feel that one of the key is for you to really speak principle and try to get the principals to work together with you to onboard their clients and stuff. And that's how we actually get that kind of numbers. And up to today, thankfully, a number of retailers are just constantly coming on board. In fact, we also started doing a little bit of incentive for the brand owners, sales agent to onboard the retailers as well, rather than us actually going to the ground and onboard them one by one. So that's one of the split. I think just wanted to give a shout out to both Kevin and John as well. So we we, Droppy, realized that since the beginning, it's very important for us to also digitize our business. So we're a customer for both Stripe and Xero since day one. And up until today, we've already transacted close to $1 billion, and there's only one account in our team. So thanks. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. Thanks.
That's amazing, right? I mean, to sit on a panel and to have interactions between the panelists who've never met before, it really does speak to the kind of transformation that's happening, and we're not always immediately aware of it, right? So and actually that rounds us off very nicely to you, John. From Stripe, a company that needs no introduction, as I mentioned earlier, because recently also became the most valuable startup in the world. Stripe has been described as economic infrastructure for the internet, right? And it's no surprise that Aizat, you eventually bumped into, this company, and that you had to.
Yeah, we're YC members as well. YC,
yes, that's right.
That's cheating. Right? But no, I mean it was going to happen, right? I think the way that Stripe has even just sort of come about, I think the vision that the Collison brothers had was to be inevitable that companies like Aizat and eventually even companies like Sandeep, right? Because we're talking about how you move money around the business.
Yep.
Right? I think the beauty about Stripe is that it's built itself as being almost an inevitable company that you're gonna have to use it at some point. So undoubtedly, Stripe, you are having a disproportionate effect in powering the digital transformation across the world, and you will continue to do, right. So for the benefit of fintech noobs like myself, can you tell us a little bit about how Stripe, as layman as possible, right?
Sure.
How does it work? How do you use technology and your platform to help enterprises sort of transform the way they do business? And what's the difference between you guys and PayPal and or is it the same? Are you competitors? Just a preamble of that. Yeah.
Sure, sounds good. And Arvind, that's real. You're not that much of a noob. Look how many books you have behind your shelf, right? So I'm going to call you out. Anyway, thanks a lot for having us here today. Congrats also, Aizat, on all the success. It's been great watching Droppy grow over the past several periods. So, and good afternoon to everyone on the call today. Thanks for joining, especially probably during a bit of lunchtime. So I think one of the things which I liked about your preamble, Arvind, was that you gave a bit of a history lesson per se. You kind of touched on the different revolutions. And if we zoom out and think a little bit more, the physical world and what kind of helped transform the physical world, infrastructure was actually a critical part of that underlying transformation historically. In order for global trade to be truly efficient, it needed it's actually infrastructure, ecosystem, and tooling, I would say. And by that, I mean you needed faster ships, you needed maritime laws, you needed security to prevent against privacy, you needed ports in order to actually move things from one place to the next. And if you look at Malaysia's history, this has actually been a critical part of Malaysia's economic growth over time. And so if you think about, fast forward to today, you essentially need the same type of infrastructure ported across to the online world, the same type of ecosystem, the same type of tooling. And that's exactly what Stripe has and is continuing to build for the essentially global economy and for businesses and fast forward-thinking businesses like Aizat, right? And like Droppy. And so in as simple terms as possible, what Stripe tries to do is make it as easy as possible for anyone on this call today, whether you are an SMB, a startup, an enterprise, whether you're selling domestically, internationally, whether you're a subscription service, direct to consumer, B2B, doesn't matter. We want to make it as easy for you as possible to run your business online, get paid, pay other people, do your analytics, fight fraud effectively, and have a very seamless, back-end process. For us, we want to take all that complexity away from you so that I think, as everyone on the panel said so far, as a startup, you can just focus on running your business. You didn't start a startup to build infrastructure. You started a startup to essentially transform the world, sell something. Let us do the infrastructure for you and take care of that payments piece. And I think Stripe started here in Malaysia in 2019, October. And our engineers on the ground here that sit in APAC, by the way, we're a company that actually has engineers and products in APAC, building in APAC. But we were very deliberate to try and understand and talk directly to startups in Malaysia to understand their critical pain points. And we heard a number of things. I think that one of the main things we heard were folks were just complaining that, particularly if you're e-commerce, that you would hit these major sales days and your provider would have downtime, or there was these frequent outages. Now think, if you're a business and you go down on 11/11, that is critical for you. That has material impact on your ability to actually float, right? And so Stripe brings that global reliability and stability to Malaysian businesses and entrepreneurs. The second thing we heard repeatedly were folks were frustrated with just speed. Previously, it would take up to 3 months to get up and running to accept payments, and it would be an offline complex process. With Stripe, that's almost instant. I think one of our favorite stories is we're talking to Wai Hong, CEO of StoreHub. I think many of you may know him. And when they were setting up Beep, he literally got on a call with a product manager at Stripe and got up and running in 17 minutes. Now think of that. 3-month process that's offline to a 17-minute online process. That's what we mean in terms of making things more efficient and materially different for startups. And the last thing I'll say to in terms of some of the feedback that we got was customer experience really mattered and increasingly matters, because if you think about the world coming online and commerce coming online, if you were selling, let's say you were selling hats before and you were the only person selling hats, now all of a sudden you wake up in a post-COVID world and there are 99 other people selling the same hats that you're selling. So how do you actually differentiate, and how do you win and not get left behind? And oftentimes that's going to be through customer service, through customer experience, and the port, the checkout flow, etc. And I think that's what we've really obsessed about at Stripe. So like, how do we, as an example, build the best possible FBX experience in the market, not just for consumers, but also for businesses. So, auto refunds, we let you know if the bank is online or offline so that you don't miss charges. And at the end of the day, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're the only provider that is both directly integrated with card networks and also PayNet for FPX, which again allows us to help with, you tackle kind of, help improve acceptance rates. So again, those are just some of the highlights. But by and large, for us, it's just really listening to the Malaysian ecosystem and really trying to tackle as many problems as we have from here within APAC. And if you don't believe me, try it for yourself. Anyone on this call can, again, get up and running before this panel even ends. So, don't take my word for it.
Yeah, so it's amazing, right? I mean, 3 months, 17 minutes speaks for itself, and this is what makes we have a lot of early stage entrepreneurs. That tune in every now and then to events like this, and this is what makes like a startup. This is what makes a startup the most valuable startup in the world. When you can achieve that kind of quantum leap in you're not just building an incremental product, right? I mean, you're literally saying, screw it, we're gonna rip out everything and start from scratch, literally from a white piece of paper. So. And so, I guess we've gone around, right? Let's go a little bit deeper now. So digital transformation, well and truly upon us, right? And we feel that the first wave is there already. I mean, we're not exactly starting at ground level, right? I mean, companies are. I mean, 70,000 retailers in Malaysia. Stripe is got hundreds of thousands, millions of customers around the world. Millions. Kevin, you're at millions of, and growing. Sandeep, marketing is there's, like even agencies are going to transform themselves. They have to, right? Because it's just, if you're still plugging billboards, I know a lot of companies that just keep doing that and they're not going into smart billboards, like you say. You're just going to get left behind. There's going to be this mass destruction of traditional economic value if this digital transformation doesn't happen, right? Overwhelmingly, the focus is, when we talk about digital transformation, we focus on the technology, right? It's the driving change. But that doesn't really address the fundamental threat of an upstart company disrupting the business model that a traditional enterprise may have, right? My favorite example, much to the chagrin of my friends who work at Astro, is Netflix. technology, obviously, when you think about Netflix, you think of technology being a key enabler, of course. But I think what's important about Netflix and even Uber and a lot of these companies, Droppy as well, is that they've actually gone and sort of innovated around the business model, right? It's Xero, made a product that costs $10 a month, if I'm not mistaken, something like that, right? Per license. I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, I can't imagine an accountant thinking in terms of $10 a month, right? So business model, like how you deliver your product, your value proposition, your content. You do it with the internet, you do it multi-device. You look at Netflix's price, super cheap, and yet they give you 10x, 50x more content. It's like, that's the quantum leap I'm talking about, right? 3 months to 17 minutes. Netflix even innovates how they get content, right? I'm going to round back to John. And this is the question, right? So companies right now are faced with this, with sort of two buckets of what they need to do. On one hand, they need to hygiene factor, right? To get basic processes. There's no point talking about IoT if you're collecting asset maintenance data on pieces of paper, right? That's just ridiculous. Forget big data. It's just paper. So that's the hygiene factor of companies going digital. We talk about digital adoption, right? So the question is, should they do that first and then focus on sort of innovating the business model to be, because part of digital transformation is also business model, right? Because you're using technology or digital to change how you do business, right?
Correct.
So are we doing this, like a waterfall? And then a flip side of that is hygiene factor away, innovate with the business model concurrently, agile, right? Mm-hmm. But now the latter is chaotic and it's fraught, but of course it's faster, right? So what are your thoughts on this? What should SMEs do? Because They're the ones that are going to find it difficult to manage this, right?
Sure. My immediate thought to this, Arvind, is that this is a trick question that you're giving, because I think in many ways the former example that you gave of the sequencing of having to go through this long, arduous process to digitize or transform, I think in many ways that would be quite valid, 3, maybe even 2 years ago to some extent. But the reality is these days, when you look at kind of cloud technologies, modern day infrastructure, it really should not take you a significantly long time to digitize, whether or not you are an SME, a startup. Again, look at the folks on this call today. I look at Xero as well. You can integrate with Xero and onboard Xero and have instant capabilities and instant efficiency, right? And so I think the main takeaway here that I'd have for SMEs or particularly early stage startups is, on one school of thought is you can go build everything yourself. I highly do not recommend that, because again, spend your precious developer resources and business time on your core business, and then lean on partners globally, regionally, locally, who can actually do that kind of infrastructure for you and have those kind of seamless integrations. That way, your time to digitize is actually not that much. And then when you're going through that process, you can simultaneously, like many of our customers do, they might say, we're selling direct now, let's go test the marketplace, let's go test the subscription model. Or let's say if in Stripe Checkout, if you want to start selling to other markets or into other payment methods, it's literally a check of a box. You go into your dashboard and you check boxes, right? This isn't a 9-month process anymore. Again, I'd just say the moral of the story here is be smart about the technology you're using.
No, great answer. So that actually answers it quite well, right? So the tools are out there. Digitization isn't, the hygiene factor of digitization isn't as complicated as it might have been a couple years ago, right? I'm gonna go to Kevin next, right? As business models start changing, the traditional information capture systems also need to transform, right? So traditional financial ratios and efficiency metrics may need to be updated to reflect new ways of doing business. Is this the case? As the world's largest accounting platform, is there any move towards this? Is there a need for this? Is there something that you can share as some insight into this?
Accounting's been around since for maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of years. So the fundamentals of it don't really change. and how to build like a cash flow model, financial model, do change, because that's based on the specific metrics in the business. But changes how quickly you can get that information, because I used to pull my hair out trying to put together cash flow models for our clients when I was working as an accountant, and then by the time I'd have it ready for them, the information changed. It was already like somewhat out of date. So look, I think every business needs it. There's a book called Measure What Matters. I think people really need to take a step back from their business and maybe have somebody external look at their business. It doesn't need to be a very expensive consultant, but draw it out on a page and say, this is all of our interactions with customers, this is suppliers, their team. Like, where can we piece it together with technology, and what do we need to really measure? And it takes a few goals to get that right for an SME, and sometimes actually having somebody who's not involved in the business look at it with fresh eyes will have this impact. Or it's a good tap on the shoulder sometimes, say, hey, you're not thinking about this, or you haven't focused on this area. So come back to your original, will the models change? I think if a person really wants to understand the business, they will, because they'll figure out what they need to measure, and that's where probably the change would be.
Okay. I'm going to circle back to Sandeep. Look, digitalization destroys jobs. There's no question about it, right? I mean, we talked earlier, John, whether people, Aizat, but whether people are worried about losing their jobs, with maybe not at the droppy side, but as a big digital transformation, automation, we are going to see some loss of jobs. And while we hope that new jobs are going to be created in its place, on that basis, the world is better off, the truth is that a lot of people are not going to be able to, have their careers disrupted by all of this. So in the name of digital transformation, Sandeep, what are your thoughts on the balance between people and automation? How fast do we drive this,
Yeah, I think that's the very valid point. What everybody is scared of, losing their jobs, right? But for me, life is about continuously learning and evolving and changing, right? Maybe in our parents' time, it was not so critical. You got your degree, you got your job, and then you learned on the job, but the job did not change such. For everybody in their 20s now, I pity you and I feel for you, but you're going to have to keep evolving and riding with the waves. And the pandemic is just the first part of that, right? There's transformation, there's pandemic, there's new businesses that didn't exist earlier. So many agencies and people have jobs today because of Facebook and Google, and they didn't have those careers earlier. And many of those careers cannot even be taught in colleges now, because those foundations you'll have to build yourself by studying online or learning, or as entrepreneurs do, doing it yourselves, making your mistakes, and then growing from it. So, I mean, it sounds a bit mundane, but life is definitely now a continuous learning and evolution process, and every job is such. I remember somebody sharing with me a statistic saying that people in their 40s and 50s were going to work 7 to 10 jobs in their life, but people in their 20s were going to work 20 to 30 jobs in their lives, or at least change jobs 20 to 30 times. And a lot of the people we see coming for job interviews, or you can see that at different age groups, are trying to find the things that they can build careers out of, but those things are going to change. And honestly, the skill sets needed are going to the bar is going to keep getting higher and higher. So the flip side is, all this automation and tools does still need people to apply it, make it work, to get the most out of it. If you have somebody who can look at the data that Type is giving out, and then work with it and optimize a business based on that, or look at the accounting software results and make some smart decisions based on that, that is still a skill set that's needed. And maybe in the past, they were not focused on the decision-making aspects, but more on the execution aspects. So I think Malaysia wants to do that. Every country that digitalizes or transforms, every company, your skill sets required change because, like Aizat said, right, he only has one account. So he doesn't need more accountants, but he might need people who can look at the data that Kevin software produces or Stripe and produces, and then make smart decisions based on that, or make an offer to his customers after analyzing that data and understanding some opportunity for competitive advantage or growth that is hidden there. So I feel businesses will need to hire different kinds of people going forward. I have clients who ask us for advice on, do I need a data guy in-house or should I outsource it? I said I could make money by selling you that service, but you need that service in-house anyway, right?
Okay.
So, and that's the truth. So they went ahead and hired that data person, right? So these kind of choices, skill sets will keep evolving. And honestly, I don't even know what's going to be the skill set needed 20 years from now. But hopefully by then I've retired and young people like John can be, ruling the world with the latest stuff. But the way I see it, it's continuous evolution, guys. And I mean, our parents' generation, perhaps they didn't need to adapt so much. They had other strengths that they gave to us. But for us, our times and the younger generation, you guys will need to keep riding these waves and working with this automation. It's here to stay, right? It's not going away. Maybe there's even talk of, the 4-day week or all this technology is going to give us back more free time, more spare time, more creative time, more time to find that balance and mindfulness that is somewhat lacking right now. So it may not even be a bad thing if technology can get us to a 4-day work week. I have no problems with that, man.
I think a lot. I think that's still still a holy grail, but I'm going to see if I can be the first company to sort of implement that. Aizat, just very quickly, I'm gonna extend a little bit if you guys are okay. Just a couple of minutes after one, because I just want to round off the conversation right at the end. I'm gonna just say that I've got a bunch of questions. We'll keep the responses to a minute, just so that we can cram a little bit more in. Aizat, you've heard of the My Digital. The Malaysian government has launched My Digital. It's a sweeping cross-ministerial sort of initiative to transform Malaysia over the decade by doubling down on the digital economy, right? So, Aizat, I'm hoping I'm not sure that you've read or at least glanced through the document, the Malaysian Digital Economy Blueprint. Just very quickly, what do you, without committing too much, if you don't want to, what do you think of it? But more importantly, what can government do to help speed up? Should government be helping with digital transformation, and what can they do if they, whatever the answer is?
Yep, I've already read through the entire thing. This is actually their third initiative. I think the first one was Penjana, followed by Laksana, and finally is the My Digital. Honestly, I think that they're finally comparing to the previous two. I think this My Digital is literally the best one. They are finally really looking into the both SMEs as well as the micro SMEs, and realizing that a lot of businesses out there, the small mom-and-pop stores, the smaller entrepreneurs, they are the ones actually contributing a lot to the GDPs. And I really thought that the entire initiative is actually pretty well thought of. My only question, throwing back to the government, right, is how are they going to execute it out? I think that's pretty much the real key on helping all these smaller SMEs. I do know that they've already started to really look into working together with really big players as well, and and private companies as well, which I thought that is pretty much the way to go. Government should really come in and provide a platform for all the business to find some form of like a leverage or even like an initiative from them. Like for example, like Kevin did mention, cash flow is really important, and they're finally launching out like a $50,000 micro loan for all these businesses. And I really think that the one that can actually keep the companies afloat. So, like honestly, I thought that the entire thing was actually pretty well thought of. It was very good. It's more towards like the execution part is the one that I think I have a bit of a concern. Yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, it's good to know that we finally have a blueprint that has a chance of actually delivering some real transformation. So of course, like everything else in Malaysia, execution it lives and dies by it. We do very well at some things. We don't do very well at other things. So the next question would be to John, right? We look at digital transformation here, the national level. One of the things that one very narrow area that we seem to have done well is the inundation of cashless or e-wallets. Where we've got all colors of e-wallets, right? And one of the things I noticed that was quite different was that for us it's a two-step, right? It's a top up and then pay, versus somewhere in the UK, for example, where it's just contactless with any card, right down to having a coffee or at the tube station. I can just sort of swipe my Apple Watch or my credit card, right? Don't need to top up, don't need to do anything. Just John, what are your thoughts on this e-wallets versus sort of contactless technology, right?
Sure. I mean, look, I think there's opportunity for things to coexist together. I think any type of digital adoption that is going to essentially make the trade or transactions more efficient and more global, more seamless is a good thing, not just for businesses, but also consumers. And so, I mean, the 1 minute answer to your question is, I think they can both coexist. I think they both will continue to get innovated. I think underlying technologies will continue to get involved. The ecosystems will also continue to grow. And from Stripe's perspective, that's a good thing. And again, anything to increase financial inclusion or digital, I think is worthwhile. And our job is just to make sure businesses are able to accept as many popular forms of payment as possible, whether that be cards, wallets, FPX, you name it.
Great, thanks. Kevin, so like I said before, we've seen the first wave of this digital transformation happen for a decade, maybe even 2 decades, right? So if you look at businesses today, what does that first wave look like? Businesses are using Office 365, they're using iPads, using Xero, they have cloud POS systems, right? Some of them have moved into hardware, better sensors, but then on the horizon are the key technologies we're talking about, right? The game changers, artificial intelligence. I meet a lot of startups to go, I'm an AI startup. That really doesn't mean much to me. I really want to know what the application of AI to that particular sector or to that product is, right? What kind of insights are you guys getting? So I guess given that Xero is such a big part of this digital transformation piece, right? Any conversations that you've been in that you've heard about where you have this data, you literally have so much data, right? What's the future looking like? How does AI sort of play into that? Is there the plan, or are you guys just thinking, you know what, there's hundreds of millions of SMEs, we're just going to bang on those doors first. We're not interested in AI. We're doing well with our $10,
Yeah, it's I think that's going to be the next big problem for SMEs who have digitized. It's what do they do next? Like you've got all this data, and you guys spoke about it a few minutes, like hiring a data person. I'd love to know how many SMEs have actually thought about that yet or have actually done it, because it's the compounding effect of digitalization. You start to digitize inside or outside your business, then together, and then you have compounding effect. And it's like, well, how do I capture it? How do I take advantage of all the things that I've implemented? And it will come down to data. And I think the way we're looking at it is we want to be globally, the most insightful and data platform that an SME can use. So we're looking at programs like, what do we do? How do we help the SMEs actually understand more insights into their business? So rather than waking up in the morning, and Sandeep said it, I think he said, make the toilet, which is I think a habit of everybody who has a phone nowadays. We want you to be waking up in the morning and being given insights rather than having to send queries through to the system. So you should be waking up and saying, hey, small insights that could have a small impact on your business are significant. How do we package them up for an SME? So they're not seeing Xero as an accounting tool online. They're seeing it as, okay, I need to go here every morning and check what's going on in my business. So that's going to take a while to develop. We think we can do a really good job of it because we're collecting yesterday's information straight through from the banks. We're seeing invoicing come through, we're seeing payments. So it's packaging all of that up and making it a daily habit for SMEs is definitely something that we're speaking about every day.
Yeah, great answer, because that's the next evolution, right? I mean, it's a natural question, and thanks for answering it, right? So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about COVID. For decades now, technologists, futurists, governments, startups, technology companies have been pushing, selling, coaxing, hustling, persuading businesses to become more digital, right? COVID has done more in a year than all you guys, right? Towards that end, right? And just when you thought $1 trillion company couldn't become a $2 trillion company, COVID, right? So we know that COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation on many fronts, especially among SMEs and the smaller companies you wouldn't expect, right? But it would be interesting to hear 1 minute from each of you guys, your experiences in the context of your business, or even observing your customers, right? Any trends, any stories, just quickly, 1 to 1.5 minutes. Let's just do the COVID piece, right? We'll start with Sandeep.
Yeah, so I guess COVID, from what I see in our client base, COVID has created an appetite for questioning whatever practices everybody had. It's created a bunch of projects in most clients where they launched e-commerce, or they're retraining their people, or they're looking at data. So it's pushed people to start moving in directions that maybe they were sitting and thinking about, but now they're getting up and moving. I think it has also exposed the fact that business realities are changing, and they need to find ways of getting new revenue and future proofing. So it's not just digitalization, but it's transformation beyond that they're looking at. So for me, I see it as more questions are being asked of their own data, of their own processes, and there's more answers that we can provide. So it's a double way to get to digitalize businesses, but it is moving in that direction.
Yep, it is what it is. Aizat, want to go and just tell us a little bit about what's happened in the last 1 year?
Yeah, for Droppy, we actually service a lot of retailers, like from convenience store to sundry store, even restaurants and cafe. One thing we noticed is that a huge portion of our restaurants and cafe customers actually shut down their business. And I think at that point of time, we were servicing close to 11,000 retailers, and more than 22% of the retailers actually just stopped buying from us. And when we went down the ground and tried to ask them, and they said that's because of COVID. I think they were locked down at that point of time. They had a bit of a cash flow issue. Obviously, their revenue just dropped tremendously, right? So we try to dig a bit deeper of what really matters for them. And again, this is just to verify what Kevin said. Cash flow is really, really important. So what we did was that we quickly just try to partner up with multiple of banks. We managed to actually sign with 2 financial institution partner, Citibank and UOB, to do the underwriting on behalf of all these retailers. So what happened is that rather than them actually paying 15 to 30 days credit term, they are able to extend all the credit to up to 365 days, about close to a year. And that actually helped them a lot to pretty much transform their business and start to adapt to digital online, whether selling by Grab or with StoreHub, BPIT, and the rest. At least they are able to actually alleviate those cash flow for themselves. But at least on Droppy's perspective, COVID really helped us accelerate our growth. I still remember at that point of time, we thought that we wanted to reduce all of the remuneration for our staff. Everyone was like, during that point of time, during town hall, everyone was really scared what's going to happen, because you don't know what to expect, right? But just when the lockdown actually started, that was the first time we had our break-even point. Things just started to just grow pretty amazingly. And we actually used a lot of the cash that we received to try to help back these retailers, because if our customers can't grow their business, and it will impact us ultimately. So that was a really good decision, and I think that was something that we're really proud of.
Okay, thanks, Aizat. John, what's it been like the last 1 year in Stripe? either globally or APAC, just some insights.
Sure. So I'll talk about Stripe, then I'll also just talk about some observations that we've seen more broadly. I think with Stripe, the big thing for us has just been this emphasis on security and stability. If you look at kind of more broad-based research, a lot of what we're hearing in APAC from retailers is that fraud, and particularly sophisticated fraud, is up 20% year over year. And so for us, we need to make sure that we have the right tools that businesses can rely on, just so that, again, they can maintain security over time, particularly as more volume comes online. Then related to that, as more volume comes online, we know, related also to cash flow, just how important it is for there to be no downtime, especially during those critical sales days. And so we've really made the investments globally to make sure that we are as reliable and stable as possible, just again, so that there's no material impact on our user base. In terms of observations that we're seeing, I call out two. I think I touched on at the start, this real emphasis on transformational consumer, customer, and overall experience. Because online space is becoming so crowded, folks are looking to differentiate. And previously, when you'd be able to differentiate based on your storefront or the quality of your store, or let's say you walk into a shop and you have that personal relationship with someone, when you're completely digital, all of that goes away. And so how do you focus on the service, logistics, payments, etc.? And then the last thing is just cash flow as well. Based on Kevin and Aizat said, we're seeing a lot more businesses opt to not necessarily collect cash and checks, tends to be more inefficient, and opt for more efficient digital ways, like again, wallets, Apple Pay, Google Pay, you name it, just so they can get paid more quickly and reliably.
Thanks for that. And then Kevin, from your perspective, right?
What we've seen from the data actually is, I think people went into protection mode last year, and maybe still are in some cases. So usage of Xero was very heavy in around cash flow and reports and P&L reports. And it did take a spike between April and June last year, and then it's continued because I think people were scrambling to figure out, hang on, what's going on? What do I need to do next? What reports, what data can I get? So we've seen a big change in that. The second interesting piece is that even though we're talking about digitization, we also provide a lot of education as part of the subscription. So we have tons of webinars going each week, best usage, how best to use the platform. And for quite a long time, we were still getting a lot of people, SMEs, like saying, no, I want to come to your office, or I want you to come to our office. That has completely changed. And in the last 6 months, just between Singapore and Malaysia, we've had 20,000 SMEs join us on webinars to learn more about how to use the platform better. So that's a really interesting point for me, because I was kind of thinking, wow, what have you been doing so far? You're paying us this money, which we're really grateful for, but we want you to get more and more out of it. So we're starting to see a spike in people being really curious on how best to use the technology that they already have.
Thanks for that. Great insights, guys. We're 12 minutes out. I'm just after one. I'm gonna wrap it up with the last bit here. I just want to run through a little bit of the. I ran a simple small poll. I found this article from the Harvard Business Review that lists down 4 things that enterprises need to, 4 factors in digital transformation: technology, process, organizational change capability, and data. And I put up a small poll for the, only because Amy lets put up polls. I had a paltry 17 people decided to comment, hardly statistically significant. But of course, technology and change capability seems to be, nobody seems to care about data though. So that's quite interesting. That's my final question to you guys, right? It's the one word, I'm sure you've seen on panels. It's the, I give you a word, you just sort of, talk for 30 seconds on it, relating to digital transformation, just anything really. I'll do John with technology, digital transformation, just end it, whatever you want to say really, just with that in mind.
There's technology, but there's also a mindset. You can't, even if you have the best technology in the world, if you don't have the right mindset throughout your entire organization, particularly if you're a startup founder or leader, to tool yourself to think in an adaptive way, then no matter what technology you have, it's going to be challenging. So mindset and technology have to go hand in hand.
Got it. Kevin, I'll do with you data, right? So just word association data.
I would say to people, figure out what data you have today, and if it's not last week's, if it's 90 days old, you've got an issue.
That's great. That's nice and succinct. Sandeep, organizational change, right? Just word association. What do you have to say about organizational change and digital transformation?
So the companies and organizations and people that are going to win in the future are not those with the most money, but those who adapt and can use all these technologies, which are generally very affordable, and use them to stay ahead. That's the source of advantage.
That's great. Great. And Aizat, I'll end with you in process.
I think every businesses have to look into their processes, because processes is the one that can actually help the business to really scale up as fast as they can.
And that's really interesting coming from you, because I think you guys have, I don't know how outdated my 40 was, but it's 70,000 now. So you guys must be scaling a lot. I don't think I'm that outdated, but yeah, that's been quite phenomenal. So look, it's thank you panelists for extending this by 15 minutes. Really appreciate. It's always good to get good chats going, and I hope everyone listening in today had a interesting time listening to digital transformation. It is incredibly important. It is upon you. You may think that you don't have a stake in it, but if you have a job, if you watch Netflix, if you buy things in the economy, if you earn money and you want to create wealth and you want to put aside something for retirement, digital transformation is affecting almost every single thing you do, whether you realize it or not, right? And it's incredibly important, although it's more important for enterprises who are now faced with this advent of digital transformation. Disrupt or be disrupted. No shit, guys. It's this is not a joke. Businesses are going to die by the big businesses, small businesses. It's going to happen. It has happened. And my favorite Malaysian cable or satellite TV company has lost 85% of its market capitalization in the last 5 years. And they're not ever getting that 15 billion ringgit of value back, and that is, sorry to slag on them, but that's to me one of the best examples. So, thank you so much for spending the time here today. I hope you got as much out of the panel as I have and everybody else. Thanks, speakers. Thanks for being here. Great job, guys.
Thank you so much again for having us and for hosting this. Take care.
Thank you.
See you, folks.
Take care.